Welcome back to Elite Fantasy Hoops with Mike Zakarian, and today we're going to be taking a look at some potential breakout stars heading into the next NBA season. And yes, the NBA Finals are still going on. Maybe it's too early to take a look, but I disagree. But before we get too deep into it, if this is your first time here, do me a favor, like the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll also be announcing our rare tier card giveaway from our most previous video.
I said we got a winner. We got a winner.
Now, a lot of this information is going to be a bit speculative. We still have the NBA draft, which is just a couple of weeks away, and then NBA free agency, which could send everything into a tizzy. But this gives us an opportunity to get a head start before everyone knows where all the pieces are going to settle. So let's get started with the team that has the #1 overall NBA pick heading into the draft, the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks have been incredibly disappointing from a lot of different areas. And most of the conversation around the team so far this offseason is which star are they going to trade? Not if they're going to trade, but which star they'll trade. Maybe both. Is it going to be Trey or is it going to be DeJounte? Which one is leaving? Or are they both leaving? But one of the few bright standouts for the Atlanta Hawks was the young forward Jalen Johnson. Now, Jalen Johnson ended up getting hurt in the second half of the season, so maybe he's off everyone's radars. But during his last 30 games, he shot 35% from three, which was up from 28% the season before that and 23 in his rookie season. During those 30 games, he averaged 16 points, 9 boards, and 4 dimes, and truly was turning into a fantasy monster for a 2 to 3 week stretch. What's also pretty intriguing about Jalen Johnson is that there's so much turmoil in Atlanta, but the one thing everyone seems to agree upon is that Jalen Johnson is untradeable and will be with the team next year. And if you remove one of those core pieces of Trey and DeJounte, who take up so much offensive usage, that's got to go somewhere. And yes, they have the #1 pick, but as everyone has talked about at length, this draft is very underwhelming. So Jalen Johnson should not only continue to do what he did last season, but also continue to build upon it. I think there's a good opportunity to get ahead of the field on Jalen Johnson now before people remember how talented he was, and especially before the new season starts where we see him probably start averaging 20 points a game. I was already excited about this second player, but then of course Twitter had to share a bunch of shirtless photos of Bilal Coulibaly. The soon-to-be second-year Frenchman showed a lot of promise in the last half of the NBA season for the very sad Washington Wizards, so there's a good chance you never even saw them play because the Wizards should not be on national television. We might look back 4 or 5 years from now, and of course all of the conversation is going to be Victor Wembanyama, a generational talent, clearly the #1 pick of that draft. But Bilal Coulibaly could prove to be the second most impactful player from that draft. Now, post-All-Star break, Coulibaly started playing almost 30 minutes a game, which was a big uptick from the beginning of the year. Now, again, 9 points, 4 boards, and 2 dimes doesn't scream fantasy value, but what is great about Coulibaly, especially from the fantasy perspective, is he averages over 2 stocks, which are blocks and steals combined, per game. Now, assuming his offensive game gets a little bit better and the defense stays there, his average draft position is so late in Underdog Best Ball related stuff, and you can also get him for so cheap and so rare. Now, the Wizards have no incentive to win because they don't have a good team. It's basically Jordan Poole doing weird stuff, Kyle Kuzma wearing weird things, and then Denny Avdia doing everything else. So Coulibaly is going to jump into a more established role in his second year for the Wizards, and they're going to showcase the heck out of him. So out of all of the people we're going to talk about today, Coulibaly is the one I'm most excited about, not because I think he is the highest ceiling of everybody that we're talking about, but I think he is the most under the radar in the fantasy space than all of the other guys we're going to talk about. And I think he can make a meaningful impact this season. #3, we're going to San Antonio, and it's Victor. No, imagine if I did a video and I said Wembanyama's ready for a breakout year.
Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
I mean, he probably is going to have a breakout year, but we already know he's going to be great. But I'm talking about Devin Vassell.
4 on the shot clock. Vassell, tough shot. What a shot. Spurs.
Now, those who have watched my content before know that I like Devin Vassell, but he really did make a jump this past season, and I think we're about to see an even bigger one. In the last 20 games of this past season, Vassell averaged 25 and 4. Post-All-Star break, he also started playing up to 36 minutes a game, while continuing to shoot a high 38% from 3. Vassell already proved to be a solid fantasy choice already, but here's the thing. Wembanyama turned into a monster that second half of the season. Arguably could be drafted 1 overall and be the best fantasy player heading into next year. But because of that, I feel like this is only going to open up more opportunities for Devin Vassell as defenses now have to start keying in on Wemby. And Wemby's not one of those guys that's just going to score 45 points a game. He's out there doing a little bit of everything, a great playmaker, and I think this is just going to give Vassell even more open looks. Now, one of the things to key in on in San Antonio this offseason, they have the number 4 pick, the number 8 pick, and they also have some wiggle room as they head into free agency. So I'm sure San Antonio's goal is to put more shooters around Wemby. Now, that might make you think, oh, then why would we get Vassell? They're going to have all these other shooters. That just goes to show how much more wide open Devin Vassell is going to be now that they surround him. Because this past year, you only had to guard 2 people. It was Wemby and Vassell. It wasn't Jeremy Point Sohan. It wasn't Trey Jones, the sharpshooter, or any other rando San Antonio was throwing out there this year. So Vassell should be able to easily get buckets. All right, we're going to take a quick break from yelling out players' names and focus on 2 different teams. And I'm going to say teams because I'm not entirely sure what I want to key in on yet. But the 2 teams that stick out to me both missed the playoffs and are in the Western Conference. And that's the Portland Trailblazers and the Houston Rockets. When we look at Portland, they've got all these weird pieces that don't really fit right now. They've got Malcolm Brogdon, who probably should be either hurt or on a playoff contending team. You have Shaedon Sharpe, who missed a big chunk of the season last year with an injury. Scoot Henderson, who looked very, very bad until the last couple of the weeks of the season and started to turn it on. You've got Anthony Simons, who kind of gets put in trade rumors, but also feels like he makes sense on this team. And then, of course, we've got Dominate. I'm very interested to see what Portland's going to do during the draft and then in free agency. If they do decide on draft day to make a couple of moves or move a piece, if somebody like Anthony Simons does get moved, we are about to see a whole ton of Shaedon Sharpe. And if you remember at the end of not this past season, but the season before, Sharpe went ham for a couple of weeks. And I think because he missed so much time, because there's just a log jam in Portland, and similar to Washington, I don't know who outside of Portland is watching Portland games, somebody like Shaedon Sharpe could go under the radar. And if Simon stays and somebody else gets moved, we already saw him put up big performance after big performance last season. So I want to have some exposure, some access to some of these Portland Trailblazer guys. Now, if we go down to Houston, we saw Jalen Green go nutso for a 2 to 3 week run. And for some reason, I'm still not really buying it. I think Jalen Green is a good player. I think he can still be fantasy relevant. I just don't know if it's gonna happen on Houston. If Houston is trying to win games right now, I feel like it's not going to be because of the Jalen Green experience. And I will happily and earnestly take that L if that is the case. But I think for Houston, the 2 guys I want to key in is going to be second-year Amen Thompson and the third-year Jabari Smith Jr. Down the stretch when Houston was pretty much done, Amen Thompson got to take on a little bit of playmaking responsibilities and is also just a defensive menace out there and can stack up stocks very quick. And then Jabari Smith Jr. had a little stretch where he's kind of like averaging 14 points and 12 boards for a little bit and then kind of tapered off again. But Jabari Smith Jr., I feel like, has the opportunity to really stand out this next year. We've seen Paolo do it. We've seen J-Dub do it from that draft class. Of course, we saw what Chet Holmgren did this past run, but I do think Jabari Smith Jr. has it in him, and I hope to see it this upcoming season. So again, that was me just listing 2 teams and throwing a bunch of names at you. So I don't know how actionable it is, but I wanted to just take a couple of shots on players from those teams. And before we keep going, just want to remind you, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do it and like the video as well. I'm also going to drop a link that'll be pinned into the comments for our playback channel, where we stream a daily show, the NBA Bit, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m., talking all things hoops. And we also watch the NBA Finals there. If you're watching this on Monday, we're going to be streaming Game 5 of the NBA Finals between Celtics and Mavericks. And as a Celtics fan, I hope we're not streaming Game 6, because please God, Tatum, end this series. All right, there's a few more players that I'm really excited about heading into this next year that I'm not sure everybody is already on board with. And one of them is We the North up in Toronto, Immanuel Quickley.
Threw it towards the rim. It's a turnover. Quickly ahead. Abachi
IQ did some serious fantasy work at the end of the season. Now, part of that was because Toronto was awful and Scotty Barnes fractured a wrist, I think it was, and missed the end of the season, so he had to do a little bit more. But IQ was also pretty productive when Barnes was out there. In IQ's last 20 games, he averaged 20 points, almost 8 dimes, and 6 boards. Now, I don't expect Toronto to all of a sudden flip a switch and be very good. I think we're going to see a lot of the core of IQ, Scotty, and RJ Barrett, and then even Grady Dick came on a little strong. We got that good Dick energy those last few weeks. I do think IQ is going to be the main offensive facilitator. Of course, we'll see point Scotty Barnes a few times, but I think what's going to make point Scotty more effective is having IQ out there so that Barnes isn't doing that for 40 minutes a game. Immanuel Quickley probably won some fantasy leagues down the stretch there, and I expect to see more of that with a Toronto team that I feel like will be fun to watch, but maybe not fun to watch in the standings. I got 3 more names for you. Names you know, but all have a caveat to them. First up is Malik Monk of the Sacramento Kings. There's a real chance that Malik Monk is not on the Kings next season, and even though he was a fine fantasy performer on the Kings, if he gets moved, I will be taking Monk early and often. I think about a team like the Orlando Magic that just misses instant offense. That's the missing piece for that team. And somebody like Malik Monk coming in there knowing they're going to play a few more minutes. Maybe he even starts instead of his 6-man role. And he's just an instant offense machine. And if he's going to get a bigger offensive opportunity than, say, what he was doing next to Fox and Sabonis, which, again, was still impressive, I do think he could take another level up. But again, that's pretty dependent on the situation that he lands in. So I'm not saying go out there and click Malik Monk wherever you're at. Maybe we just wait a little bit more until we get some more information, but it's definitely a player that I'm monitoring. 2 to go, and this one I have no idea who is going to be on this team, but it's Evan Mobley from the Cleveland Cavs. Now, a lot of people have been frustrated with Evan Mobley. Maybe it's because Bill Simmons said he was going to be the next Tim Duncan when he hadn't played an NBA game yet. But the Cavs are in this really weird spot. Sure, they survived the 7-game series against the Orlando Magic in the first round. They managed to steal a game from the Boston Celtics because the Celtics are legally required to lose at least 1 home game every series, it feels like. But the Cavs have been rumored to make a lot of different offseason moves. Is it Donovan Mitchell that's not going to be on the team? If Donovan Mitchell comes back, Darius Garland and his people already said, I don't want to be on this team then. Let me cook. And then, of course, there's Jared Allen. Does it make sense to play Allen next to Mobley? Probably not. But are the Cavs going to move Allen now? Do they wait till mid-season form where Allen maybe has more trade value as some team near the deadline needs to make a move? But with Allen off the floor, Mobley had a 21% usage rate for the Cavs. He averaged 15 points, 11 boards, 4 dimes, and then over 2 blocks per game. I'm not saying stocks, over 2 blocks per game. But one of the more impressive performances we saw from Mobley was actually in that second-round series against the Boston Celtics where he just absolutely torched them.
First of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Evan Mobley.
Now, again, a lot of this is dependent on if Jared Allen is there or not. I think Mobley's a fine fantasy play and will have a pretty good year regardless of the situation. But I do think he makes a considerable leap if he is playing the 5 and not next to Jared Allen. And just a reminder, after this last player, I'm going to announce who won the Rare Tier So Rare card from our last video and introduce the next giveaway. Now, some might disagree that this player should not be on the list because we already know he's so good on the court. But I need him on the court and not in court?
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
It's the Memphis Grizzlies' Ja Morant. Ja Morant is like MVP caliber type player. Honestly, I thought we were going to see Ja do what Anthony Edwards did this past playoff run.
So shout out to Bite Bite. And he coming in here with these clown pants on.
But the Memphis Grizzlies had a season from hell last year. Ja gets suspended a handful of games, then he comes back, he gets hurt immediately. Jaren Jackson Jr. had to do a lot. Desmond Bane missed a ton of time. Marcus, my boy's wicked smart, got hurt immediately, missed a ton of time. Brandon Clark didn't come back until the very end of the season. They were just decimated on all fronts. But now the Grizzlies get a good first-round pick. They've got some cap flexibility, and Ja Morant comes back. And even in the brief time we saw Ja this past season before he got hurt again, he immediately comes in and gets a game winner.
Morant's going to get ahead of steam with a chance to win it in his return. Here goes Morant. He spins. Morant scores! And the timer expires. Count the basket. And Ja Morant wins it for the Grizzlies.
Ja Morant is absolutely electric, and hey, maybe he worked on his three-point shot a little bit while he was spending some time off the court. And I know most of the conversation this upcoming year is going to be, of course, about Jokic, Luka, and Wemby as MVP favorites with a sprinkle of Giannis and Embiid, but if the Memphis Grizzlies can right the ship behind Ja Morant coming back and being an absolute force, then we're going to see his name right there, and no one's even thinking about whether it's drafting Ja Morant or purchasing Ja Morant Sorare cards. So there you have it. This NBA season isn't even over yet, and I've already given you my breakout plays heading into the next season. All right, for today's video, the giveaway is heading over to UnderdogFantasy.com. We're going to be giving away 5 different entrants into the Underdog Best Ball Double Dribble Contest, which has 100K up top. And if you're one of the winners that lives in an area that doesn't allow you to play Underdog Fantasy, I'll hook you up with a little Sorare love instead. But all you have to do is tell me who your breakout play is for the upcoming NBA season. Put it in the comments. And drum roll, please. Our winner from the last video we did, a rare tier card from Sorare, is going to Norman W. Norman W, congrats. I will reach out. You got yourself a little rare tier action. And as always, I appreciate you watching the content. And if this was your first time here and you made it this far, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to tell me your breakout play for the upcoming NBA season.